welcome back to the Gridiron Expert. We're continuing our Big Ten football predictions today, and our next team pulled off one of the biggest upsets of the 2017 season and have the team to be a real threat in the Big Ten West. They are the Iowa Hawkeyes. So I'm pleased to announce that we have a guest visitor on the Gridiron Expert. We have College Football Dojo on the line. We had some technical difficulties, so you won't be able to see his face, but we've got the audio. He's with us right now. He's going to help us out with the Iowa predictions. Really our first guest analyst on the Gridiron Expert, so this is going to be really exciting, and I'm really excited to break down the Hawkeyes here. So how you doing, College Football Dojo?
I'm great. How are you today?
I'm doing good. I really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so we got the Hawkeyes here coming off an 8-5 season last year, winning their bowl game over Boston College, so another really solid year for them. They've got quarterback Nathan Stanley coming back, Nick Easley at wide receiver, and Noah Fant at tight end, so their top two receivers come back. By far, they have 3 offensive linemen returning for the Hawkeyes this year, and I really like their defense with those 6 returning starters. As an Iowa fan, College Football Dojo, how do you see this team doing this year, and what kind of starters do you like coming back this season?
How I see them doing this year is actually better than last year. One reason being is because they have a weaker schedule. Now that's definitely going to be in their favor. They don't have to play Ohio State, even though they beat them pretty well last season. They don't have to play Michigan State, don't have to play Michigan, but they do still have to play on the road at Penn State. And I think, without a doubt, that's going to be their toughest game this season. So I think they'll do better, but overall, I think this team is younger and still also, I think, be okay. The defense is losing a lot, especially in the offensive line as well. It's going to be much different for them.
Yeah, and I can agree with you on that. And he's definitely right with the schedule being much easier. They avoid Ohio State this season. Last year they had to go to Ohio State. This year they get to Iowa State. They get to host them this year. And we'll just go ahead and dive on into the schedule if that's good with you. And we start off with Northern Illinois, and I think we can both agree that's going to be, I wouldn't say necessarily an easy win. Northern Illinois, still a solid contender of the MAC, but they should take pretty easy care of them.
Yeah, definitely. Going into that game just a little bit, I know it's a season opener. Not a lot of people know this, but in 2013, season opener of that game, Northern Illinois actually beat Iowa in Iowa City, and that was coming off their Orange Bowl season against Florida State. And other than that, Iowa's I should be no problem for them this year, but that is something I did notice a couple years ago.
Yeah, so like we said, you cannot take some of these MAC teams lightly, certainly not Northern Illinois, who's had a great run in the MAC these past couple of years. And then in week 2, a big-time game against Iowa State, the big-time rivalry game. Last year, as many people recall, was a thrilling game, 44-41. That was at Iowa State, and one of the toughest places to play, I think, in the Big 12. And this year, they returned 12 starters, including their quarterback and Kyle Kemp, the running back, and David Montgomery. So the offense is still have a solid production. And last year, they really surprised a lot of people getting to their bowl game, winning that game over Memphis. Iowa State hadn't been relevant for the past couple of years, but had a big year, big breakout year, and I expect some solid production coming back for them this year. I think this game is going to be a win for Iowa, though, due to it being at home, and I think I like their defense just a little bit more than the Cyclones, but what's your opinion on this one?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's going to be a great game overall, just like last season. I mean, this rivalry always seems to be pretty good. In my opinion, it's very underrated, first off. The offenses on both sides of the ball, I think, are going to be just as explosive. I mean, Iowa State has still a lot of production returning, as does Iowa on the offense side of the ball. But like you said, in Iowa City, I think the place is going to be electric. They're going to want to win their 4th straight over the Cyclones.
Yeah, and like we said earlier, this is not an Iowa State team they want to take lightly. He thinks it's going to be another great game. I do too. Last year, there's a 3-point victory for the Hawkeyes in overtime. And then, obviously, we don't even have to talk much. Northern Iowa should be an easy win in just the 3rd week of the season. But then it sets up the big-time showdown against Wisconsin. Some people think this game could really determine who wins the Big Ten West. And Iowa benefiting for having this game at home, at Kinnick Stadium, by far one of the toughest places to play. I even think in the nation. We've seen them take some of the top teams in the nation down to the wire there. Last year beating Ohio State, like we mentioned, by 31 points. Almost beating Penn State, losing by 2 as time expired to the Nittany Lions. The year before, beating Michigan when they were number 2. So obviously not an easy place to play. But with this game being at home, I do like Iowa a little bit, but I think Wisconsin's just going to have too much power there. You got Alex Hornibrook at quarterback, Jonathan Taylor, a very experienced offensive line. Although they only returned 4 starters on defense, I still think Paul Chryst is going to have this team ready to go. So I think this is going to be a loss for Iowa against the Badgers.
Yeah, definitely. I think Jonathan Taylor is actually, you saw what he did last season his freshman year. He reminds me a lot of Bryce Love when it comes to stat-wise. I think he's one of the greater running backs in the nation. And like you said, Paul Chryst is one of the greatest coaches in the nation, honestly, in my opinion. He's not very talked about, but like you said, this probably is going to decide the Big Ten West, who's going to win it, along with Northwestern maybe, but I think Wisconsin's going to slide by. It's going to be a very close game, probably very similar to the one like they had against Penn State last year.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, I like this Wisconsin team a lot, but this Iowa offense definitely has enough weapons to compete with the Badgers and hang with them there. So after coming off a loss, they get a bye week, it's an early bye week, which isn't always good for teams, but coming off a loss, it's going to be good for them to correct some things that they may have done wrong against the Badgers. But then they have back-to-back road games, starting off with Minnesota. Minnesota, I think, owns one of the best young head coaches in the game in PJ Fleck. And last year they just went 5-7, but were actually really much better than that 5-7 record indicated. They had a lot of close losses. Their defense only allowed just a little over 21 points per game. And this year, the biggest concern for me with the Golden Gophers is their quarterback position. They have some questions outside the ball, but they do return Rodney Smith and Tyler Johnson and Philip Howard on the offensive side of the ball. I actually can predict a loss here for Iowa because I think this Minnesota team is going to be much improved from last year. Should be able to get to a bowl game despite having that week of rest. I think they're going to lose to the Golden Gophers on the road.
Yeah, I'm really 50-50 on this game. Reason being, the last 3 seasons, if you look at Minnesota and Iowa, each game has been decided by single digits. I think it was 5 points, and then both came by 7 points. I mean, Minnesota's just due for a win. You can tell right here. PJ Fleck, it's you got to give him time. I mean, you look at Braum at Purdue. You give him one season, he goes 7-6, turns around that entire program. I think at Minnesota, Fleck at Minnesota is doing the exact same thing. I think Minnesota can actually get a win here. It's a really good rivalry between these two, the Floyd of Rosedale. I agree with you on that. I think Minnesota is a weird very.
Yeah, so a good game against Minnesota. I think it's going to be a loss for Iowa here, but it's going to be close. And like he said, I'm the same way. I could see this game going 50-50. This was a game I really struggled with, but like he said, Minnesota, I think, is due for a win, and this could be one of those games that really sends them over the top and gets them to a bowl game, or will be a big factor down the stretch. On the road against Indiana, though, a team that I think is going to struggle a lot this year, they do return 7 starters on offense, and whether it's Brandon Dawkins at quarterback or Peyton Ramsey, they should be fine at that position, but the defense is what concerns me the most with just 3 returning starters. I don't see Indiana having a breakout year. Maybe they can get to a bowl game, but I think they're going to fall just short. So with this game being on the road, I'm still going to give Iowa a win over the Hoosiers.
Yeah, I definitely think Iowa will win this one, too. It shouldn't be too much of an issue. In recent years, this was mostly a trap game for a lot of teams, specifically in the Big Ten East. I mean, you look at teams like Michigan barely scraping by. Ohio State had trouble with them. Iowa also had trouble with them. But like you said, I don't think this Indiana team is going to be as good as, or as scary, I should say, as they were back then, trying to upset some teams. But I got Iowa in this one as well.
Yeah, I agree. And so then they move on to Maryland. Right now, they only have 2 losses. One of them to a solid Wisconsin team. The other one to a Minnesota team that I think is going to be improved. And they get Maryland at home. And some people are really high on Maryland this year, and I think they could have had a really solid year last year had they not been so injury-riddled. They lost their top 2 quarterbacks to ACL injuries and just finished 4-8, and they still had that upset win over Texas on the road to open up the season. So this is a solid Maryland team that can put together some wins this year and maybe get back to a bowl game. But it is at Iowa, in Iowa City. I just don't see Maryland having enough talent to come in here and upset Iowa. They're coming off 2 losses in their past 3 games, but they're also coming off a win over Indiana on the road. They're going to be high on themselves. I think they get a win over the Terrapins in this one.
I agree. I think this should be an easy win for them, one of the easier wins on their schedule for them, and I think they'll have no issue.
Yeah. And so they were on the road to Penn State. Now, like we said, Iowa has been known to upset some teams, some of the top teams in the nation in recent years, but most of those have been at Kinnick Stadium at home. This one's on the road at Penn State. Iowa certainly wanting to get revenge against the Nittany Lions for what they did last year at Iowa's house. Losing as time expired with a game-winning touchdown was a heartbreaking defeat. Penn State, I believe, ranked number 4 at the time. But this is a Penn State team that, yes, did lose Saquon Barkley and lost some starters on the defensive side of the ball. But it's still going to be a solid team. They still have Trace McSorley at quarterback, and they still got James Franklin leading this Nittany Lions team. I think one of the better head coaches in the nation. Doesn't get a whole lot of attention, but he's still a great head coach. It's on the road. I think Iowa can keep this game close for maybe a half, 3 quarters. Then I think Penn State pulls away.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. For one reason, Iowa is not good at Happy Valley. If you saw what happened 2 years ago, it was just an easy win for Penn State. Made it look very easy. A lot of people think they're not going to be as good without Saquon and Deshaun Hamilton on offense, but they still have Trace McSorley. They still have Juwan Johnson. And like you said, Coach Franklin, I don't think gets the credit that he deserves. He's a very good coach. He has turned around that program so much, considering everyone knows what happened in recent years before that. I think Penn State should have no issue. It's probably going to be a night game, I would assume. It's going to be a pretty solid win for the Penn State Nittany Lions.
Yeah, I definitely agree there. And then back-to-back road games as well. And if you look here at Iowa's schedule, it is a favorable schedule, like College Football Dojo mentioned earlier. And they draw their three teams out of the Big Ten East straight in a row. You got Indiana, you got Maryland, and you got Penn State. And really, one of those only being at home, but they got lucky. They only pulled Penn State. That's the toughest team that I think they're going to face on this schedule. They avoided Ohio State, they avoided Michigan, they avoided Michigan State. So pretty favorable for them. But they do have back-to-back road games. At Purdue now, Jeff Brom, I got to give him a lot of credit for what he did with the Boilermakers last year. They hadn't been to a bowl game, I don't think, since 2012, and he comes in just year one, gets them to 6-6, and then wins that bowl game over Arizona. So Purdue, with a very, very solid offense this year, 9 returning starters on the offensive side of the ball. Got Elijah Sindelar at quarterback, who played the last couple games with a torn ACL. My biggest concern for Purdue this season is going to be their defense. Only 4 returning starters there. A lot of questions on that side of the ball. So if Iowa can come in here and their offense is clicking, much like they were against Ohio State last year, I could see them pulling the win over the Boilermakers. But with it on the road and the Purdue having this type of offense, and maybe this defense being a little bit better since it's going to be so late in the season, I'm going to give Iowa a loss on the road against the Boilermakers.
Yeah, I was also very skeptical about this game as well. I think it could go either way, but I also have Purdue as well. I mean, they're a team that actually went into Iowa City and beat them last season. Not a lot of people know about that. They picked up the last 2 wins of the season and turned it around, won their bowl game. This Purdue team is just going to be going up from here on out. I think they get the win as well at Purdue. Yeah,
the Boilermakers winning by 9 last year over the Hawkeyes on the road. And then they come out with their final 3 games, and right now, Iowa is just 1 win away from bowl eligibility. They got 5 wins, so they're sitting at 5-4 right now, so not great, but still not bad, and their schedule works out well where they should get to at least a 6-win mark. You got Northwestern, Illinois, and Nebraska, so none of these teams really scream a lot of panic for the Hawkeyes. With Northwestern, though, a team that a lot of people are still high on, that really have a lot of people finishing second or maybe third in this Big Ten West. I really am a big fan of their quarterback in Clayton Thorson. I think he's going to have another solid year this year. They lose Justin Jackson at the running back position. The defense also returned 7 starters on that side of the ball. So Pat Fitzgerald, also one of the more underrated coaches in the Big Ten, continues to do a great job with the Wildcats team, but it is at Iowa, and I think Iowa's just going to have too much depth and too much talent on both sides of the ball, especially after some of the guys Northwestern lost last year, to lose this game. So I think Iowa gets a win at home over the Wildcats.
I also think this is going to be a win. Most reason I think that is because Iowa and Northwestern, not a lot of people know this is a big rivalry. Well, not a big rivalry, but it's not something that people talk about. These two do not like each other. Northwestern is not like Iowa whatsoever. It's either a very close Northwestern win or a pretty easy Iowa win. I think Iowa does pick up the win. It's going to be an electric atmosphere at Kinnick Stadium, and I just think they're going to out-talent them on the offensive side of the ball. I think Iowa's going to go a very close win, but I would not be surprised if Northwestern could pick this one up.
Yes, I definitely agree with that. This is a Northwestern team that isn't getting a lot of attention, but could surprise some people after that 10-3 season they had last year. And we don't have to touch much on Illinois. It is on the road, so you never want to, overlook a road game in any conference. But Illinois really struggling during the Lovie Smith era. They do return 16 starters, but this is a very, very young Illinois team, mostly consisting of freshmen and sophomores. I think Illinois is still at least 1 year away from maybe even competing for a bowl game. So despite being on the road, I think Iowa goes in there and gets a pretty easy win.
Yeah, Illinois is like you said, a very, very young team. This should not be an issue for the Hawkeyes.
And then they close out the year. They're up to 7 wins right now, so obviously bowl eligible. Now they're just trying to improve where they're going to go bowling. Nebraska to close out the year. Scott Frost, of course, one of the biggest coaching names of the offseason last year, leaving Central Florida to go take the job at his alma mater. And this is a Nebraska team that, it isn't going to be bad this year. They returned 8 starters on the defensive side of the ball, which I think is going to be their strength. I like their wide receivers, especially led by Stanley Morgan, but the quarterback position is where I'm a little torn right now. They have a lot of questions there. They're probably going to have to start a freshman, Adrian Martinez. Scott Frost knows how to coach an offense, so I could see him getting Nebraska to a bowl game this year. But this game being at Iowa, and Iowa also winning 3 straight over Nebraska. They have a 3-game win streak over them. Last year winning 56-14. The year before winning 40-10. I just don't see Nebraska being there quite yet in the Scott Frost era to defeat the Hawkeyes, especially on the road.
Yeah, I actually 100% agree with that. I think Scott Frost is going to definitely turn around this program, but it's going to need more time than just one season. I mean, you look at their schedule, they have 3 out of 4 of the top 10s in the Big Ten East, and then they got Iowa, Northwestern, Wisconsin. I think Iowa is going to pick this one up as well. It's not going to be as easy as it was in past seasons. Like you said, you got a freshman quarterback, Adrian Martinez. Is he going to be like his brother when Taylor played there? And then you got Stanley Morgan Jr., probably arguably the best receiver in the Big Ten. But like you said, I think Iowa is just a better fundamental team, and I think they're going to get a win at home, and they're going to pick up 8 wins on the season.
Yeah, so that's going to give Iowa an 8-4 record on the year. Nothing to complain about at all. Actually, an improvement from last year because they went 7-5 in the regular season and picked up their bowl win to finish 8-5 with that win over Boston College. So this is definitely a solid Iowa team, and the date that we're all going to be watching for the Big Ten West, especially, is September 22nd when they face Wisconsin at home. This is going to be a big game, but for both teams, especially, but really in the conference standings, because if Iowa can pull this one off, maybe they can pull off the win over Minnesota. They are certainly Big Ten title contenders, without a doubt. But right now, we have them finishing just 8-4, but still another solid year for Kirk Ferentz and this Hawkeyes team. I can't wait to see how they do this season.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you look at this team, and like you said, there's a lot of question marks. Could they win that game? Could they lose that game? I mean, you look at this Iowa team along the years, they always get that one big upset, and then they always lose to a team that they're supposed to beat. Now, that's usually the case every single year. And I think they can, make potential to maybe make the Outback Bowl like they have in recent years, maybe the Alamo Bowl, something like that. But yeah, I think 8 wins for this team is reasonable. I think they can pick up second or third in the Big Ten West. I don't think they're as good as Wisconsin. I think they pretty much have this division locked up. But overall, it's still a young Iowa team, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Stanley and Fant is a great combination. Actually, Fant is without a doubt one of the best tight ends in the nation. I don't think that's a question. But especially on the running side of the ball, they're losing Akram Wadley. Now they got Kelly Ivory Martin and Torrin Young going to be the backs for Iowa this season. But the offensive line is going to need a lot, and I mean a lot of help. So I think this Iowa team is going to be developing as the seasons go by.
Yeah, absolutely. So there you have it. Me, College Football Dojo, collaborating on this. We both predicting Iowa to finish 8-4 on the year. College Football Dojo, thank you so much for coming on, and we plan to do this a lot more in the future.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for having me, man.
Absolutely. And as always, please go check us out on Twitter at Gridiron Expert, Instagram at The Gridiron Expert, and always here on YouTube. Please continue to like, comment, subscribe, and we will see you next time on The Gridiron Expert.